tonight's thought. How many hundreds of thousands of tapes do you think there are in storage in some anonymous warehouse in Hollywood, California, of dads getting hit in the nuts with baseball bats? Yeah, you know this tape? This ubiquitous tape everybody knows where, like, the dad in his, like, white dad shorts and tennis shoes and knee-high socks and his polo shirt is, like, teaching his kid how to hit a little ball. It may be like a wiffle ball, which wiffle balls don't really have a lot of impact, of course. We all know that, but, like, when the kid is 5 feet away, as they often are when, you know, the dad is teaching him how to hit the ball, he's super, you know, they can have a lot of impact. And I don't know who's filming. The mom is probably filming or whatever, and they just want to get this monumental moment on tape where the kid learns to, you know, the young boy, the future Jose Canseco, the future Barry Bonds, hits his first baseball, and the dad throws it right at the kid, and the kid takes his little plastic Little League bat, and the ball, of course, just goes 5 feet right into the testicles. It never gets old. And, you know, I'm a teacher, and one thing that you find out a lot when you're a teacher is all the television shows that still come on that you thought have been canceled for years. They used to hold the primetime spots when everybody would be watching TV, but they've since fallen in popularity, and now they've been sent to the syndication graveyard, and they come on at like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, along with all the court shows. And one of these shows that I found out about that is still on the air is America's Funniest Home Videos. Okay? America's Funniest Home Videos is still on the air. And this show has been on, I looked it up, since 1989. I was 7 years old in 1989. I'll never forget the first time I heard about it. I mean, it seemed like the greatest idea for a show ever. And at the time, it was the greatest show ever. My Aunt Kay came down from the mountain to stay with us for a week, and she brought with her a whole bunch of videotapes that she had taped off of television of the new show called America's Funniest Home Videos. And it was hosted by Bob Saget, who was kind of like television's favorite dad at the time. Well, television's favorite white dad. Bill Cosby was still on television at the time. And Bob Saget would be there with a studio audience, I guess in California, Hollywood, California or something. And he would just be showing a bunch of these tapes that people mailed in. You know, they took videotapes, like actual videotapes from their camcorders, wrote care of Bob Saget of America's Funniest Home Videos, and put them in the mail and sent them in, never to be seen again. They would do this, which today strikes me as insane, because they knew they were never going to see that again unless they maybe dubbed the tape, but not a lot of people did that. Not a lot of people dubbed their tapes. You know, they really did think that VHSs, they were just going to kind of, you know, last forever, and they wouldn't need to archive them or, you know, eventually a lot of people digitized their videotapes. But this idea that you're capturing this rare moment of your son hitting a baseball, and he could very well grow up to be the next Chipper Jones, or I don't know, the next Hank Aaron or somebody like that. Oh no, that's not important. You know, he hits the dad in the nuts with a wiffle ball. Send it in. Okay, that's funny, and we're going to win a bunch of money. That was the idea, is that if you sent it in and they actually showed it on the air, you were in the running to win a lot of money. And they would actually fly you out to Hollywood, California to be in the taping of that week's show so that they could bring you there and they could show you they could show the audience the tape, and based, I guess, on the judges or the audience reaction or something, you would win the money. And then I think if you won that week's show, you would then be put into a whole quarterfinal or semifinal. It was kind of like Star Search, except for like stupidity. Because a lot of people to be in these videos had to do incredibly stupid things. They had to make an ass out of themselves. And again, these people were doing these videos. It was like lightning strikes. You capture it in a bottle and then you mail it off to Bob Saget. And this was the thinking in like 1989. I really don't know how many people dubbed their tapes so that at least they could have a copy of it. These tapes went off and they were never seen again. And I just imagine, like, maybe were those tapes destroyed? Were they put in like some landfill somewhere, like the E.T. video game? I don't know. I just kind of imagine that there's some warehouse somewhere in Hollywood, California, or where they're just stored away in some crate. Hundreds of thousands of tapes of dads getting hit in the testicles with their kids' wiffle balls. Those kids are now in their 30s and 40s. And those tapes are stored away, never to be seen again. They're right there along with the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, from Birmingham, Alabama, live, this is the Midnight Citizen Show. I'm your host, Mike Booty. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Yes, I am live here on youtube.com/Mike Booty. If you are joining me, thank you so much. So great to have you. Looking at the live stream right now, I've got some people watching, which is amazing. Thank you so much. I've got PQ River commenting. He says that all of those tapes are in the Nutshot warehouse on Ventura. Okay, that's great. I don't know Los Angeles that well. To me, from Birmingham, Alabama, it's just all Hollywood. I don't know. It's all the glitz and the glamour, you know. So, but if you're not watching tonight live, don't worry about it. You can still see the live, live stream on demand. If you go to youtube.com/Mike Booty, it'll be there on Sunday. But it is Saturday night, June the 10th, 10:53 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me. But I was thinking that just this show, this America's Funniest Home Video Show, may very well be the most prophetic show. Is it okay to say that? The most prophetic show of possibly the second half of the 20th century. I don't know. You know, the show, hosted by Bob Saget, came out in 1989. And it was originally just supposed to be like a special. They're like, you know, hey, people do stupid things and film themselves doing it. Maybe we can just build like a Sunday night little platform out of it. And they put out a call for people to send in the tapes, and then suddenly they were getting flooded with tapes of not just dumb dad fails. Of course, that term hadn't even been invented yet, a fail. But, just people doing really stupid things. And people like laughing at that stuff, like their families like laughing at it. Maybe other people will too. So, they sent them in, and suddenly they had a big hit on their hands. And when my Aunt Kay first showed the show to me on these, tapes that she had taped off television, it was still in like its special format. The show did not come on every week. You had to catch it. And eventually, I guess they realized they had a hit on their hands, and they put it on every single week, right? And it was a big hit, and it's still on television today, even in the age of the internet. Obviously, people no longer obviously send in videotapes. They email things, and now I don't even know what they do now on the show. Of course, now Bob Saget's not the host anymore. You've got that guy who played Carlton on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He's the host of it now. But I guess right now, I don't know. I guess they just pull things off of a YouTube server or something. People send it in on YouTube, or they just send emails, and now people can still have their own personal copies of them doing dumb things, right? But it definitely predicted what's going on now, because people love to, that's one of my favorite pastimes, just to go onto YouTube and just look up people doing dumb things. There's all these videos that I can think of. Of course, there's countless videos of like newscasters making mistakes, like, drawing phallic imagery on the weather map when they're charting the course of a hurricane or something. Of course, there's the classic one of the newscaster stepping on grapes in like wine country, and she slips and falls over the barrel and just like screams in agonizing pain. It's just a tale as old as time. People love to watch videos of other people just like having a terrible time, right? And now it's like you have this kind of complete culture around that on the internet. As a matter of fact, I was watching some sketch show on Netflix today. It was like what was that? I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. And a buddy of mine told me about it last night and showed me a sketch. I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. I'll watch some more of it. It's one of these sketch shows where everything is filmed. There's no live studio audience like there are for a lot of sketch shows. So it's like a complete, it's just a series full of a bunch of short films. And some of them are hits, but some of them are misses. But one of them that was very funny was it was satirizing this moment, and I've had them. I don't know if you have. If you work in an office where there's some time to kill before a meeting. So what do you do with your coworkers? You go onto YouTube and you just, oh, have you seen this one? Have you seen that one? Oh my gosh, what in the world are they doing there? Why are they in that building? Why are they at the top of that mountain? And apparently this happens enough in culture for like a sketch show on Netflix to pick up on it and satirize it. And so they're all sitting around talking about their favorite YouTube videos. And one of the guys in the room doesn't watch YouTube. He doesn't watch viral videos. So he is very much left out of the shenanigans. That's the premise for the sketch. I'm not going to be like that guy who tells you how the sketch pays off, because then I'm just like repeating a joke that I heard the other day. But you can go and watch it for yourself. I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. But anyway, of course you can't make that magic happen. You can't force it to happen. And I think that was one of the things that you could always pick up on in America's Funniest Home Videos. You just assume that if you filmed a funny video and sent it in, they were just going to accept it no matter what and show the show. At least that's what my sister and I thought when we were 7 and 8 years old. We were just, we're just going to film ourselves doing something funny, and then we're going to win $10,000, right? Okay. So we're in the backyard one day, and we've got our my dad's video camera, and we're like, we're gonna make a viral video. We don't know what a viral video is, but we want to make a video that we want millions of people to see, and hopefully we can make a living off of it or something, you know. So we set out to make an America's Funniest Home Video, and I'm telling this story because today, July 10th, 2021, is my younger sister Melinda's birthday. So happy birthday, Melinda. And so we would just go around the house all day making funny videos to send off. And we made this video. We're in the backyard of my parents' house. This is in Moody, Alabama. And I think I'm probably 8 or 9 years old. My sister's probably 7 or 8 years old. And we decide to, I look in my parents' garden shed for some kind of like a prop that we can use. And, oh, there's a rake. And so we set down the rake in the yard, and we're going to do like a classic rake gag, right? Like I'm going to like walk into the rake, and I'm going to like step on the spikes, on the forks, right? And it's going to bring the pole into my head and like bop me in the nose, and boom, that's $10,000 for an America's Funniest Home Videos. We're going to, we've got the envelope with Bob Saget's name on it ready to go. And you can't stage magic, right? You can't stage it. So I keep walking into this thing, and Melinda's filming it. And the thing keeps on, it doesn't, that rake, it just, I don't know. It's like the forks are dull or something like that. Or it's like plastic or whatever, and it just bends every time I step on it. I think I end up chipping the plastic on the rake, and, my dad has to go get a new rake. But anyway, the thing keeps coming up, and it comes up barely to my like waist level. And I keep on having to like step on it really hard to the point where I'm basically goose stepping like a Nazi or something just to get the thing to come up to shoulder length. And when I finally get it to come all the way to my face, it doesn't hit me in the nose or anything, which is probably a good thing. I would have ended up in the emergency room, and that would have been a funny home video. But the thing keeps going to my left and to my right, and I'm doing like a Pulp Fiction dance with it. And we do like 20 or 30 takes of this. And I'm assuming it's probably like a long summer day, like today or something, where we're out of school and we don't have anything to do. And what I'm realizing now sitting here, 31, 32 years later, is that would have been a funny video. Just to film us trying to film the video and just everything going wrong, right? And so we eventually get kind of disheartened with it, and we're sitting there at the end of the day with the video and all these takes that we did of us just getting it wrong and wrong every time. And we're sitting there and we're like, well, do we want to mail it in? And we're like, no, we put a lot of work into this. We want to keep it. We want to keep this video, right? So yeah. But, there's this culture now, though. You go onto YouTube and you watch people trying to make these funny videos. And I don't know about you, but I can instantly tell. I have a pretty good detector for when they're setting themselves up. Like right now, the popular thing to do is, you do all these reaction videos where you like watch something and you react to it and you film yourself reacting to it. And you can usually tell with these people that they're not sincere at all. They're just making like a big show of being surprised about something. Like they watch the new Star Wars trailer and they start crying, right? A while ago, there was this viral video that was going around YouTube of these two kids, listening to that song by Phil Collins, "In the Air Tonight." And the whole time, they're acting as if they're like just really surprised, like they've never heard anything like this. And then suddenly the drum beat picks up, ba-bum, 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 bum, bum, bum. I can feel it, and then they're just like, oh, and they start dancing around the room and like losing it and everything. This video was everywhere. It was on the news. It was all over my social media feeds. They may have been sincere, but I don't know. I think like that's just like my sister and me playing with the rake in the backyard. You know, we're just trying to stage the magic. So, got some, here, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll play some, little bit of this America's Funniest Home Videos brilliance. This is, okay, so this is the first episode of America's Funniest Home Videos with Bob Saget from 1989.
Got a bucket. Oh, yeah, well, I got a hose. Yeah, well, I got a whole pool.
So Bob Saget, I totally forgot about this. How I don't know if they still do this, if Carlton from Fresh Prince still does this. But this is where like Bob Saget would actually like narrate people, like their thought processes and everything. And so like he was narrating these two people getting into like a fight with a water hose in their backyard. And one of the people just like fell on the above ground pool and like it exploded and water went everywhere. So that's it.
You have to live in the center of the earth not to love Mickey Mouse. But he's almost too perfect, isn't he? Just once. Wouldn't you love to see him cut loose and get down? There are certain things in life that there are just no answers for. Like, why are these three guys standing up in the back of a truck? Or why is this truck trying to get up this hill? And why don't they make trucks like they used to?
So they just fell out of the truck. Oh, here's a little kid stacking up a bunch of cat food.
These tuna cans until finally they're taller than she is. Look at that. It's the Leaning Tower of Tuna. Now, wouldn't it be nice if somebody called to congratulate her?
She just knocked over all the cans. I mean, you know, I gotta say, like, I'm knocking it over. I'm giving it like this kind of, you know, postmodern ironic critique of America's Funniest Home Videos, right? Oh, look at all these stupid people, and Bob Saget kowtowing to them. You know, this is years before I knew that Bob Saget was actually like notorious for being one of the dirtiest comedians working at the time. You know, if you've ever caught his act, especially from that time, you know, he would watch him on these family sitcoms, and he'd be all like family friendly and dad and everything, and then he'd go and like tell these dirty jokes at nightclubs, right? On cable. So like I found a compilation of kids hitting their parents. Groin Hits remix. Here's like a Groin Hits remix. Of course, if you're not watching this live, you're going to miss this. You can always catch it later on demand on youtube.com/Mike Booty. You heard it here first, right?
You're clearly someone
you got to get through this ad first.
So why wait to screen for colon cancer? Because when
it's great. Okay, that's enough. If you're listening to the podcast of this is you're not getting anything from this at all. But you can just imagine that each time, you know, one of those sounds, you know, dinged, oi, aye, you know, that was somebody getting hit. That was somebody getting hit in the nuts. Okay. So. Yeah. So I really do wonder where all those clips are. One thing that always surprised me when I was a kid watching America's Funniest Home Videos is that they would have timestamps. You know how like the old video cameras, you would take footage and it would timestamp not just the time that you took the video, but also the date. And I would be watching some of these shows in like 1993 or 94, and it would say like January 1986. And I would talk to my mom about that. Like, wow, man, this was filmed years ago. And, you know, just my mom would be like, yeah, it probably took Bob Saget a long time to get around to watching it. So, that's just the way it goes. That's the way it goes, you know? So I've talked a lot about America's Funniest Home Videos tonight. Yeah, one of the reasons I was kind of thinking about America's Funniest Home Videos this week is because I was looking up just voice actors. And one thing that I totally forgot is, of course, America's Funniest Home Videos was still in the era when it first came on in the late 80s. It was still in the era of Ernie Anderson. And Ernie Anderson, of course, is kind of an important guy to me because if you've been listening to the Midnight Citizen show for a while, you know that I, Mike Booty, am a huge fan of horror hosts. Specifically, you know, people like Joe Bob Briggs and Elvira. And Ernie Anderson was the original horror host. He created a character named Ghoulardi in Cleveland, Ohio in the 1950s. And it was this thing that, you know, the television station he worked for, like a lot of other television stations in the country, they would have a big library of films that they needed to show, but they didn't want to just show them because they were kind of boring and old and nobody really wanted to watch them. So they had to like repackage them. And the way that they repackaged them was by putting a horror host there. And it's honestly, it's like a lot. Television is doing this now too. If you watch, for instance, the Independent Film Channel, you know, like IFC. IFC used to be this channel that would actually show independent films. It doesn't do that anymore. It just shows that 70s show. And like Parks and Recreation and all that. And that's kind of boring. You know, people have seen those shows 100 times. So what are they going to do now? Well, they're going to repackage it in some way. So one of the things they do is they do like bingo or something. You know, you can like get a bingo card from their website or their app or something like that. You can play bingo. So they come on at host segments and you can play bingo along with them. So that's one way that they have of reviving the format. So this has been going on for 60 years, 70 years, something like that. Okay. Bunch of drunk people outside. If you have, once again, if you're watching live, I set up a camera to look outside the Midnight Citizen studio. And so I've got it on right now, and there's a bunch of people walking up from the bar down the street, just kind of pausing in front of the Midnight Citizen studio. A bunch of people just rode by on those scooters, those little electric scooters that are all over town now. I got to talk about one of those. I rode one of those the other night. I got to talk about it. But anyway, hey, listen, I'm getting off topic. Okay. What was I saying? Ernie Anderson was Ghoulardi. So he was in the first wave of these horror hosts in the 1950s. And eventually he moved to California. He moved to Los Angeles, California, and he had a son named Paul Thomas Anderson who grew up to become a major film director, directed films like Boogie Nights and Inherent Vice, based on the Thomas Pynchon novel. And Ernie Anderson became the voice, the premier voiceover artist for television in the 70s and 80s. And specifically, he was the voice of ABC. So if you were watching ABC in the 1970s and 80s, if you were watching like The Love Boat or America's Funniest Home Videos, you would hear Ernie Anderson's voice. And so I never knew this growing up. Then, of course, when I became a teenager and I started watching the films of Paul Thomas Anderson and, finding out about horror hosts myself, I would find out all this information now. And I'm like, wait, that was the guy, right? That was the guy. Let me see if I can pull up some Ernie Anderson voiceover here. Ernie Anderson, ABC, The Love Boat. Let's see if we can get him on the Love Boat here. Right. Yeah, So, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. You've heard this guy.
Just might sink.
That's entertainment.
It's a Titanic 2-hour spectacular when Barbie Benton, David Birney, the Rovers Audra Lindley, Lola Falana, Dick Martin, and Donna Mills sail unawares into the funniest ocean disaster ever.
Hello. I thought we might have a little chat.
Goodbye. Is that little enough for you?
Is this the big kiss-off for the Love Boat?
The Love Boat. The Love Boat, right? So yeah, that's Ernie Anderson doing the Love Boat. And it's just one of those things where something that you're aware of as a child and something that you are aware of as a teenager or a young man or a young adult, they suddenly clash and come together. And that's how you build a knowledge. That's how you build a brain full of useless knowledge, right? That's how you, that's how you win Jeopardy or something. I don't know. So yeah. Nice night outside the studio. I think what we're going to do I just got to say this, okay? I was going to go to a music break, but I want to do this a little bit more about these voiceover artists, and just how important I think they are, because they really do sell something that's unsellable, right? Like, who would ever watch The Love Boat? I mean, was that ever really a good show? Was that ever really, just a show, like, you're flipping through the TV guide and it's like there's like these people who work on like a cruise ship and they're constantly trying to like get people to fall in love with each other or something. That's when you need a voiceover artist. You need somebody to sell the banal, right? And that's what somebody like an Ernie Anderson can do, right? Let me see this. Do I have? So I have like I have like some Ernie Anderson outtakes here. Let me see. Of him like trying to read this copy.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, let me explain something to you.
There's something wrong with this picture. I'm fucking leaving here. You have another plan?
Answer the phone, you dumb fuck. Roll the fucking thing and shut her up.
I mean, this is a guy who has to sell the banal, right? Yeah, and I guess, PQ says that people watched The Love Boat when there were only 3 channels. I mean, I suppose so. I don't know. I would have like read a book or something like that, but I'm sure people did a lot of that back then too. But yeah, you need a voiceover artist though to sell the stuff, right? You need somebody to like spark some enthusiasm into it. And like movie trailers obviously used to rely very heavily on the voiceover artist. There was the idea of the guy who would come on, Don LaFontaine, right? Who would, start out saying "in a world," right? all those movies were exactly the same. The movie trailers were the same. The copy was the same. But when that guy came on and said, "In a world," you got excited, right? So this is the last thing I'll say, and then we'll go to a music break, right? About 12 or 13 years ago, I had the opportunity to have a guest appearance in a short film that my good friend Alex did, called Hell is for Bastards. This is kind of like an Inglourious Bastards, kind of war movie ripoff or satire. I shouldn't call it a ripoff. It's a satire, right? And my friend Alex, basically what he did is he just went on to like a voiceover, like pay a voiceover actor webpage. And he basically just paid this professional voiceover actor that kind of had this in a world resonance, to him. And so I'll play that now, and you're going to be able to see a very young... This is before I started doing the Midnight Citizen show, right? Yeah. But yeah, my friend Alex got this guy to record it. I think he paid him like a few $100s, and it took like an afternoon, right?
1941, Hitler and his Axis forces had spread through Europe, spawning evil, threatening peace, decency, and freedom. It was at this time that the Americans were called in to kick some kraut ass.
You wanted to see me, General?
At ease, Bronson. It's those goddamn Jerrys. They've teamed up with the Japs and their advanced technology. They've come up with some kind of device.
A gift for the Meritojo, mein Führer. What do they call it?
A mixed cassette tape.
So much for baseball and apple pie, yeah?
See? Hey! It's an audio device that allows you to mix sound. Like a goddamn phonograph record. Only it's the size of a cigarette pack. God damn it, men shouldn't toy with such power. This technology could win them the war. I've been given strict orders to pass this classified information to only the best. Only the most seasoned, savoriest, succulent, sauciest bunch of men are required for this mission.
So you've called on my men?
Yes, you and the Savory Seven. Don't worry, Mr. President. We're sending in the best.
Good to hear. Give the Krauts hell for me and Uncle Sam. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world, and you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. That word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences. We must unite in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution. Annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Where others fear to tread, they fight.
I hate these goddamn German jungles.
They win. They die.
Thanks for killing that Jerry for me, Butch. Now all I need's a helmet.
No sweat, Wimpy.
Wimpy, get down! Don't you die on me! Get up, you son of a bitch! Where's your patriotism? Death is for Nazis! Damn you, Hitler! I'll get you for this!
In a world where Nazi villainy lies around every corner, it takes a real bastard to survive. Experience the drama.
Yeah, this is the same direction that got Wimpy and Butch killed.
You got a problem, Harlan? You got a problem with my orders?
No, I got a problem with your damn walk face.
I'm the leader of this group. You're my soldier.
Hey, guys. We can't keep doing this. We got to fight the Nazis, not each other.
Experience the action. Experience the Thaw Lines. And Joseph Walker as Dr. Strangelove.
With the mixtape, Mr. President, they will put the Doomsday Machine to shame! Heidela!
This summer, prepare to be read, white, and blown away by the greatest artistic achievement in all of cinema.
This is my wife, Serena Ferducci, called the Ox. She wants to be a hairdresser. Let me go home. Ox. Ox. Ox.
Tex. Tex. God damn it! War is hell!
Richard Roeper claims this is the best war movie epic in years. Prepare to cry tears of patriotism. Michael Bay, watch out. Heaven is for angels, but hell is for bastards. Coming July 4th, 2009, Independence Day. Presented in real American 3D.
So that was fun. I haven't seen that in many years. I think that was filmed in 2008 or so. And yeah, it was just a backyard film that my buddy Alex made with a bunch of his friends. And I just actually texted Alex while I was showing that. He's will sometimes watch the show, but I know he listens to the show, so I'm sure he'll be happy to know, or maybe embarrassed. I don't know. I don't think he'll be embarrassed. No, he did a great job with that. I mean, it was just a lot of fun to make it. We made it over the course of about a week and a half or so. I think it was filmed for the Sidewalk Film Festival here in Birmingham. And yeah, you could hear Ken Osborne is the name of the voiceover actor. And I don't know what professional movie trailers he's narrated or commercials. I'm not sure. But that was definitely a satire of all the movie trailers that I guess Alex, and he's about my age, we grew up listening to in the 90s. When the voiceover, that was the primary thing that sold the movie. It wasn't necessarily always the celebrities in the movies or the special effects. You know, it was just how big and how epic can that narrator make the film sound, right? You know, like you could put on the screen the caption, you know, 2 thumbs up. But it didn't really exist until you heard Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up, right? I mean, that was important stuff. It was a big deal. Okay. So yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to take a break here, and enjoy some music. I will be back. You're listening to the Midnight Citizen Show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Da kommt Bruce Banner mit seiner grünen Mütze, heute grau. Was du's auf, Baby, sonst stößt er auf dich ein. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, Baby. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, Baby. Ich werde grün. Du ärgerst mich, ich werde grün. Du ärgerst mich, ich werde grün. Du ärgerst mich, ich werde grün. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, grün, Baby. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, grün, Baby. Batman sind dreckig und gemein. Superman und Batman schlag ich die Fresse ein. Superman und Batman vor mir auf allen Vieren. Superman und Batman werde ich gleich die Fresse verlieren. Ich bin verrückt, Mann, echt durchgeknallt. Ich bin verrückt, Mann, der unglaubliche Halt. Ich bin verrückt, Mann, echt durchgeknallt. Ich bin verrückt, Mann, der unglaubliche Halt. Komm schon. Jetzt ist alles grün. Jetzt ist alles grün. Jetzt ist alles grün am Keyboard. Jetzt ist alles grün am Schlagzeug. Jetzt ist alles grün an der Gitarre. Jetzt ist alles grün am Bass. Jetzt ist alles grün am Teppich hier. Jetzt ist alles grün eine Topfpflanze. Jetzt ist alles grün. Jetzt ist alles grün. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, grün, Baby. Komm schon, Tick, Mann, Tick, nack an, Tick, grün, Baby.
All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that little musical interlude. Had some fun comments during that musical interlude. I got a one comment that says Harlem says hi, so am I to believe that Moody is watching right now? Really? Who played Harlem in Hell is for Bastards? The video that I just played? And then we got PQ River out in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, saying Harlem Mania. So I've created a cross-continental bond over Hell is for Bastards. I'm happy. I'm so happy about that. That's great. That's what the Midnight Citizen Live can do. Oh, man, but I hope you enjoyed that music just now. The first song you heard was Freeze by Kilobot from the album Hounds of Dartmoor. Second one you just heard, Running with Wise Fools by Krakatoa from the album of the same name. You may have never heard of those bands or that music before, but, you know, they're both available for free from the Free Music Archive, where you can find them and a bunch of other fantastic artists. It's at freemusicarchive.org. Yes, .org. It is a non-profit run by WFMU in New Jersey. And you can use their music, and it's not just all, you know, bands and things like that. It's a lot of instrumental music, things for creators. Like myself, you can take their music and all you got to do is attribute it. You can put it on whatever you're making. As long as you're not making some kind of profit for them. Although I'm sure you could probably contact the artist. I've had several bands contact me before when I've played their music and just say, thanks for playing our music. And I'm sure if I were to reach out to them and say, like, hey, I'm, you know, monetizing this video. Would you like to share in the profits? I'm sure they would be okay with it, but that's not really a problem that I have, because, you know, the Midnight Citizen is and has always been a non-profit endeavor, right? So I make the money, I make the show for no money, and I put it out there for no money, and you can enjoy this show as well as the back catalog of 10 years of the Midnight Citizen Show completely for free over at my website, mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. And you can also watch this live stream of the show on demand over at youtube.com/mikebooty. You can also catch up with me and a bunch of other fellow podcasters at the Overnightscape Underground onsug, ONSUG.com, ONSUG.org. Excuse me, wait a second. I've totally forgot. Yeah, it's onsug, ONSUG.com. Founded by Frank Edward Nora in 2009, and we've got one of the great founding members listening tonight, PQ River, once again out in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. So thank you so much for joining me, everybody, tonight. And we've got some more shows. Stick around. Yeah, I've got some movies to review. I bought some movies this week. I never buy movies. I never buy physical media anymore. There's just really no reason for it, and I'm running out of space rapidly. But I do buy them every year in July and November. I go to Barnes & Noble, and I mingle with all the other greasy, smelly film nerds to buy Criterion movies from the Criterion Collection. And they do a half-off sale twice a year, once in July and once in November. And these are just absolutely fantastic editions of some great films. And I kind of went crazy this week. I bought 4 movies. I've never bought that many movies in one day during one of these Criterion sales, but I have them. They're right here. I'm going to get to those in just a minute. But first, what I would like to do is, I've got some scotch here. This is normally the time of the show where I do a toast, and unfortunately most of the time I do a toast to a dead celebrity. And normally I just like to drink, like I was going to drink to my sister's birthday, and I will still drink to my sister's birthday. So why don't we'll do two toasts, okay? So one, Melinda, my younger sister, who stood in the backyard with me in Moody, Alabama in 1990 and tried to make an America's Funniest Home Videos. It did not work, but we have the video now forevermore. We did not send it off to Bob Saget to store away in some warehouse in Hollywood, California, along with the Ark of the Covenant. My little sister Melinda, toast. Okay, there it is. It's good. All right, next. A toast to a film director, actually. We're about to talk about some movies, so we will toast to the film director who passed away this week, Richard Donner. Richard Donner. I got the sad news this week, as I always do for my friend Jason. Whenever a celebrity dies, he usually texts me. Says, R.I.P. Richard Donner. And this is very sad. So Richard Donner is a filmmaker that goes back all the way to the 1960s. He directed some of the very early episodes of The Twilight Zone, and returned, I believe, to direct. No, he did not direct a sequence in The Twilight Zone, the movie. He was too busy directing The Goonies, right? Or Lady Hawk. Okay. So Richard Donner was one of these kind of contemporaries, I would say, of Steven Spielberg. Somebody who came up in the same league as Steven Spielberg, but he wasn't really quite like Spielberg in his career path, where like Spielberg built a brand. Richard Donner was always like a director for hire. There are directors like that throughout history who routinely put out great movies, but because they don't really have a stamp, like Spielberg, you're watching a Spielberg movie, you're watching a Tarantino movie, a Scorsese movie. But movies like Richard Donner did, they're just directed in their own way, right? Like whatever the film or the script calls for, that's how Richard Donner does it. And I think that just comes from him directing television, because the old television directors would just show up and they would have the script and they might have a little bit to say about the casting and things, but they would just show up, set up the shots on the soundstage and move on with it, right? And so Richard Donner was always kind of a director for hire. Okay. And so after, The Twilight Zone and a bunch of other movies or television shows he directed in the 60s, he went on, of course, to direct Superman the movie, right? He was going to do Superman 2, and he actually filmed all of Superman 2, but then they had Richard Fleischer step in. Richard Fleischer, who was Max Fleischer's son, came in and directed Superman 2. But that's okay, because Richard Donner came back, so he did movies like Lady Hawk, which is sword and sorcery. Of course, my generation knows him best from The Goonies, which is a movie that I've never really gotten into. I've never really enjoyed that movie that much, but I can see why people have such nostalgia for it, because it's little kids, going into their backyard and hunting for treasure and everything and actually finding it. And, it's a fun movie. It's just, I like the stuff that's grounded, that's above, before they go and hunt for the treasure and do all the stuff that people like. That's when I like the movie. I like it when they're just hanging around the house, being goofy, pulling pranks on each other and all that. Anyway. And then, of course, Richard Donner directed what would become probably his biggest legacy, which was Lethal Weapon. He directed all 4 Lethal Weapon movies, right? This is the one with Mel Gibson before everybody just hated him, and before he hated everybody, and Danny Glover, And it was about the quintessential buddy cop action comedy of the 80s. Where they're hunting down pornographers and and heroin dealers. And Lethal Weapon 2, in my opinion, is probably like the greatest comedy sequel ever made. It's with Joe Pesci, where it's like a weird action comedy, but it's got like a social statement to it. It's all about them going after some kind of South African drug smuggling ring, right? Or no, it's I think they're like laundering money or something like that. But, you know, of course, South Africa at the time, it was like a big anti-apartheid statement to make the villains South Africans in Lethal Weapon 2. So anyway. All right, so that was Richard Donner's, major achievements. And really, his film career, more or less, I wouldn't say he did like a lot of really big movies in the 90s. He did movies like Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts. And then in the 2000s, his career kind of fizzled out. He was sort of retiring and all that. But, nevertheless, I think Richard Donner is just one of these great directors that a lot of people don't really recognize for how good he really was. Like you look at somebody like a Spielberg or a Tarantino or a Scorsese, and you're like, they were a great director, or they are a great director. You know, it's like you always know when you're watching one of their movies. But I always think like these directors for hire, like a Richard Donner, somebody like that, you're like, every one of their movies is different. So can you honestly say they're like, in a lot of ways, in their own respect, a better director? I don't know. So anyway, so we'll take a toast to Richard Donner right now, and yeah, let's do it. Here you go, Dick. Richard Lester. Thank you, Adam. Richard Lester. Not Fleischer, excuse me. Directed Superman 2. Okay, thank you. And we have another toast also. So, Paul, my old manager at Starbucks, good old friend Paul, is having a Midnight Citizen watch party right now at his house. And that's where Moody, who played Harlem in Hell is for Bastards, is. And they're all sitting out there, and apparently it is Paul's wife's Jody's birthday. Paul's wife's Jody's birthday. Wow, that's 3 possessives in one sentence. I don't know if I've ever done that before. But anyway, so we will all drink a toast to Jody also. Jody, happy birthday. Thank you so much. It's not really birthday music. All right. So yeah. So what movies do we have here? So we've got some Criterion movies here to talk about. So the Criterion Collection, once again, just let me kind of tell you, if you're not familiar with it, for film geeks like me, this is a major deal because, you don't want to just watch the movie. That's not good enough. You know, you have to really indulge yourself in the world of the movie. There are not a lot of movies like that I care about. But one remarkable thing about the Criterion Collection is that they can really make you care about a movie that you never really thought that you cared that much about before. And they do it with this just amazing packaging. Okay. So I'll show you, for instance, one movie that I bought this week was Shampoo, right? This movie from the 70s. I've never really cared much about this movie at all. Okay, so this is a movie with Warren Beatty and Goldie Hawn and Julie Christie. And it came out in 1975, right? And I won't say that I bought the movie just because of the packaging, okay? I'm not going to be that stupid, right? Or that, that submissive to advertising, okay? But I have seen this movie before. I've seen it several times, and it's I'll tell you the reason I bought it. One is because it's just, I've been reading the novelization by Quentin Tarantino of his movie that came out a couple of years ago, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which takes place in 1969. And it's really, from a lot of perspectives, it's Quentin Tarantino trying to reimagine, or not really reimagine, but like really bring to life the Hollywood that he knew in 1969. And so this movie Shampoo, I think, is a perfect complement to that book in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It takes place in 1968. It was released in 1975, but it takes place in 1968, just before Richard Nixon is elected president of the United States. And it's about a hairdresser played by Warren Beatty, who basically just goes throughout the entire movie just having sex with different women. And the men who love them are completely oblivious because they think it's, the 1960s in Los Angeles, a male hairdresser, he has to be gay, right? So that's kind of the whole comic premise of the movie. But the primary reason I bought the movie is just because it really is like a day in the life. It's like a slice of life of Los Angeles of a certain time in the 1960s, just before things like Altamont and the Manson murders, and Watergate. And it's just this time where there seemed to be like a lot more innocence going on. Now, of course, the film, as I said, was made in 1975. So it's like it's an attempt in a little bit of a way to reimagine or maybe romanticize a simpler time a little bit. And if you're listening and you're like, oh, I was alive in the 1960s, it was nothing like that. Everybody was just like insane all the time. It was no surprise what happened with Charles Manson and Sharon Tate and all them. Okay. It's like, we knew it was going to happen. Right. Okay. Yeah, no, I know, but I think that there's like this version of the 1960s that Shampoo actually gets along quite well. It makes its point in the fact that everybody seems to be so wrapped up and consumed with their own lives and their own narcissism that they can't really see the fact that times are changing and that things are really not as comforting and not as nice as they may seem on the outside. So I think if you're watching Shampoo on like its very basic level, you'll just enjoy Warren Beatty going around like driving his Triumph motorcycle around and having sex with all these women, and it's kind of funny and it's a fun farce. But on the deeper level, there's definitely this idea that these people, like every time they're in a room, there's like a television that's playing like war coverage or like Nixon campaigning or something, and nobody's paying attention to any of it, And so in a way, it's like one of the reasons that Criterion selects the movies that they do. Not every movie deserves a Criterion, and they don't select every movie for a Criterion release. But one of the reasons they select Criterion movies is they look at these old classic films that might still have relevance today. And I think Shampoo definitely does. And not to get too political, okay? But I think like one of the reasons that Donald Trump was elected in 2016 and why we had such a 4-year-long shit show was because people had become lethargic in the same way that Shampoo makes a case for the way that they had done in the 1960s, right? People have become so consumed and so narcissistic, and they basically, in a lot of ways, let pop culture rule their lives, okay? That they were just making bad decisions and not even realizing it until many years later, So anyway, it's a good film, Shampoo. I got it on Criterion, and they always have these great special features, They always have these great special features. Like they've got a conversation between two film critics talking about the movie. Excerpt from a 1999 appearance by Warren Beatty on the South Bank show. An essay. They always have an essay, and some of the movies are loaded up a lot better than others. But anyway, that's really all right. The other two I got, they kind of go together. We got two films by Albert Brooks. I've been meaning to get these for a while. These are, so like Albert Brooks, of course, is the great American comic and filmmaker who, to me, just made some of the greatest movies of all time. One of them is Lost in America. Just a great comedy. And I always think about Lost in America every time I either change a job or I'm thinking of changing a job. Lost in America is that great film about this guy played by Albert Brooks who decides to quit his high salaried position as an advertising executive and just drop out of society in 1985, much in the same way that the heroes of his favorite film, Easy Rider, did. And he's like, we're just going to drop out of society because I'm tired of the rat race. I'm tired of worrying about who's getting a promotion over me. You know? So they drop out of society and they buy an RV. And they decide to just live the rest of their lives in an RV on something like $125,000 in cash, right? It sounds like a dumb plan. It is a dumb plan. And honestly, every time I think about like the fact that the world is open to me, I don't have to stay in my job if I don't want to. You know, I was thinking about this earlier this summer when I'm like, I'm done with another year of teaching. Do I want to do another year? Or do I want to just drop out and do something else? I think about Lost in America, right? Now, I'm not saying that like my wife and I are going to get an RV and we're going to go to Las Vegas and like they do in the movie, and my wife is going to do, well, an incredibly stupid thing. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen the movie. But I just always think about that. So Lost in America is a great film, Albert Brooks. The other film is Defending Your Life. The movie that he made is a follow-up to Lost in America. It's still in the shrink wrap. I haven't opened this up yet. Defending Your Life, though, is a great comedy. And one of the criticisms that Albert Brooks gets about a lot of his movies is that they don't have good endings. His endings always kind of seem tacked on. Like they're just kind of afterthoughts for the rest of the movie. And while definitely with some of his movies, I agree with that. Defending Your Life has a great ending. It has a genuinely fantastic, you know, those endings you watch a movie and you just kind of get goosebumps because it's so good. And you feel like the ending is so earned. You know, there are like a few movies like that. Like the end of Back to the Future is like that. You know, you get goosebumps because it's so good. The ending of The Shawshank Redemption, you know, where he like meets Morgan Freeman on the beach and they hug, right? And the camera pans away. I mean, that's like a goose flesh ending. Defending Your Life has a goose flesh ending, in my opinion. Has a great ending. Basically, it's about a guy who dies, right? In a bus crash. And don't worry about it. It's not like a morbid, sick movie or anything. It's actually very funny, the way that he dies. Driving down the street, listening to like a Barbra Streisand song. Which is like the worst possible way to die in the world. To me. I mean, you could be thrown into a pit of lava or you could die listening to a Barbra Streisand song. I don't know which is worse, but anyway. So he goes to heaven, but it's not really heaven. It's like this, it's not purgatory either. He basically goes to this alternate reality where it's like, it's called Judgment City. And this is a place where you go and what you essentially have to do is you get an attorney and you go into a courtroom and you have to defend your life. That's the title of the movie, yes. And what you have to do is you have to sit in there and you have to convince everybody. So the idea is that you get many, many lives. And with each life, what you're supposed to do on Earth is you're supposed to overcome fear. You're supposed to basically advance humanity by not being afraid of anything, by taking chances and going out on a limb, right? And so Albert Brooks's character in that movie has to prove that he took all the chances that he could have, that he invested in risky stock deals, that he went in and stood up to his boss, you know, to get a promotion, things like that. And if he can't prove that he overcame fear and that he was a brave individual on the planet, then he has to get sent back, right? And so, of course, Albert Brooks, the character of Albert Brooks is the character he always plays. It's kind of like Woody Allen. Always plays like a nebbishy guy, right? Albert Brooks plays just like a nervous, neurotic dude. And so, of course, he can't convince the judge that he has earned the right to move on, to ultimately not have to go back to the planet Earth, but to move on to heaven. And so that's kind of the tension of the film, is that that Albert Brooks is going to get sent back to Earth, right? But does he still have one more chance to redeem himself, Because he's still in the same body and he still has the same consciousness that he did on Earth. So, Defending Your Life is one of those great comedies that just explores the idea of like what happens after we die. And, there's a heaven and there's a hell, or there's a purgatory, but, ultimately, like, why are we on this planet to begin with anyway? Naturally our instincts are to survive, right? And sometimes to survive, we have to flee from danger, right? But nobody ever did anything from humanity by running away. We have to move the human race forward. We have to advance technology by facing our fears and doing things that are terrible, right? Where we could die. Okay. And so Defending Your Life assumes that there is a reality after we die that sort of assesses whether or not we actually contributed to the human race's advancement on the planet, which I think is fascinating. Because, growing up in the church, I was always told that God is somewhat indifferent, to our plight on the earth, right? He doesn't really care about what the context, was if you sinned. He just cares that you sinned, right? Anyway. Should say that Meryl Streep isn't Defending Your Life also. Meryl Streep. Yeah. Okay, what was the other film? So I got another film here, right? And I got a documentary, okay? A documentary. And the Blu-ray's not in here because I was just watching it. Called Town Bloody Hall, right? And what I like to do a lot of the times with these Criterion sales is I do blind buy things. And I blind bought this one. Blind buying is meaning you buy it without having ever seen it, without hardly knowing anything about it. And so I gave myself over to this, not because of the cover art or anything, even though it is a beautiful, it looks like a banner ad for like a boxing match or something like that. And the cover of it says, Susan Sontag, ringside, Betty Friedan, ringside, Jacqueline Sabalas, Jermaine Greer, Jill Johnston, Diana Trilling versus Norman Mailer, right? I saw that and I just got excited, right? Okay. So, yeah, this is a good film. Okay. So it's a documentary. It was originally filmed in 1971. And the documentary filmmaker, D.A. Pennebaker, right? Am I saying that right? Who directed probably my favorite documentary of all time, The War Room, about the 1999 Clinton campaign to become president. D.A. Pennebaker was asked by his friend Norman Mailer to come to Town Hall in Manhattan and film a discussion or a debate between him and four of the leading feminists at the time. Okay? This is fascinating to me because I love little, things like this. And this is the New York intelligentsia in the 1970s fascinates me. This is a time where you had Gore Vidal and William Buckley going on television, two of the leading intellectuals at the time who talked like, overeducated, pretentious New Englanders. And millions of people would watch them on television. They cared about what they had to say. Nobody would give a care about these guys anymore. But this is a time where it's like, it's like these people who are writing for Harper's and New Yorker and everything, they were celebrities on the level of like whatever we would have now, Brad Pitt or DiCaprio, And so Norman Mailer was one of these, was like the establishment intelligentsia. He had won the Pulitzer Prize a couple of times. He was a very widely read author. And in 1971, he wrote a very controversial piece for a magazine which essentially dismissed the women's rights movement. And he was seen as, a male chauvinist pig and all this stuff. And so these, the town hall in New York, which is this concert venue, had this organized this talk for Norman Mailer to go and defend himself against these leading feminists at the time. And it's called Town Bloody Hall for a good reason. The one of the authors that he spoke with in the movie, Germaine Greer, calls it Town Bloody Hall. She's English. But it's definitely bloody because, like, from the very beginning, the arguing stops and it just goes on for about an hour and a half. And it's a really fantastic look into, it's like a niche documentary. It's not for everybody, but it's a really fantastic look into the way that people spoke and the way that people thought and the way that people, articulated themselves in the 1970s in a way that they are very much afraid to now. There's a lot of stepping on eggshells, a lot of sensitivity now. And this is very much just a document of a time in history when people really believed that in order to have any kind of understanding, you could not hold back. And I just think it's a fascinating film for that matter. What I find fascinating about Town Bloody Hall also is that D.A. Pennebaker, the documentary filmmaker, just brought a couple of cameras to this event on a whim. He had no idea what he was going to do with this footage. And the reason that the movie did not come out until 9 years after the event had taken place, it was eventually released theatrically in 1979, is because he thought the footage was unusable. And indeed, when you watch the film, the camera work is very shaky. It's kind of all over the place. He filmed 3.5 hours of footage. It was very difficult to edit it down. And eventually one of his partners found the footage in storage and edited it down. And indeed, it works really well. It's not a 3.5 hour long film. It's about an hour and a half. And it's distilled down to its bones, right? And the shakiness of the camera actually adds to the tension. It really works, okay? So why am I really going into all this, okay? The point is that I am a very big fan of documentary films. I love the idea of documentary films that you can just pick up a camera and you can go into an event and you can film it without knowing what you're going to do with the footage. You could just have it on a hard drive, or you could have it in storage and you'll never know what you're going to do with it, but you do have it. It's a document of history, right? That's not how documentary films are made anymore, I don't think. Documentary films now are made after an event has happened. Minds have been made up about what happened at that event. And so now they take cameras and they film a bunch of talking heads of people recounting what happened at that event and giving their opinions. And what they do in order to take you into that event, rather than actually having footage of it, is they will do animation to reenact it or something like that, or they'll do a reenactment. And I think all this started with a really good film that was made in the 80s by Errol Morris called The Thin Blue Line. That's when the whole idea of you can restage events for a documentary came into fashion. Okay. And I think it's like watching a movie like Town Bloody Hall gets me really hot and bothered about the state of modern documentaries. Because I think about another film that was made around that same time by the Maisel brothers, great documentary filmmakers who, created this whole way of making documentaries, which was called direct cinema. And indeed, it really revived the idea of documentary filmmaking in the late 60s. Direct cinema is this idea that you do just film a bunch of stuff and you edit it together, and that's the only amount of editorial input that the filmmakers have, is their editing. They don't provide narration. They don't make themselves a part of the documentary. Okay. It's direct cinema. They're trying to give the audience as much of a fly on the wall perspective of what happened so that the audience can then make up their mind about it. There's none of this idea that you're going to watch something already knowing what the filmmaker's agenda is. Okay. So, the Maisel brothers made this movie called Gimme Shelter, which is about the Rolling Stones and the disastrous concert they put on at the Altamont Speedway outside San Francisco, California in 1969. And the idea is that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and these guys basically allowed the Maisel brothers to film them. But they did not tell the Maisel brothers what they needed to film, what they should film. They didn't tell the Maisel brothers what to take out of the film. They just handed the project over to them and gave them complete editorial control. And that film actually starts with Mick Jagger being shown the footage of a gun, being pulled on him by a member of the audience. And Mick Jagger is like shocked about it, right? And in that moment where the gun is pulled on him, a Hell's Angel wrestles him to the ground and ends up killing him. Okay? So why is a Hell's Angels there? Well, it's because the Rolling Stones thought it would be a good idea to hire the Hell's Angels to run security at the Altamont Speedway, which was a free concert and expected to be, from the outset, more heavily attended than Woodstock. Okay? And they paid the Hells Angels in beer, right? Okay? So after all of this, after all the crazy stuff that happened, after several people were killed, and after the event was considered a disaster, and after Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and the rest of the Rolling Stones were considered completely responsible for the affair, essentially, it never dawns on Mick Jagger to tell the Maisel brothers, maybe don't release that footage, right? Maybe don't make a documentary of it. But the Maisel brothers do it. Mick Jagger never tells them anything, right? And so you cut to today where everybody has such an obsession over narrative. And if a documentary gets made about a subject, you better bet that that subject is going to have something to say about what's in the final film. Or maybe not them, but their publicists, their agents, everybody, right? And so getting back to the point that, Town Bloody Hall, watching it just makes you really kind of mourn the idea that there was a time where you could take a camera into the crowd, film it, and you don't know what's going to come of the footage, but you know that whatever's you're going to do with it, it's going to be your decision as the documentary filmmaker and nobody else's, right? Oh, dog. Here's my dog. Okay. This is a good time to cat. Stop it. Izzy. Stop. Izzy, stop. is a good time to cut to the video store. Take a trip down there, yes. While I get my dog out of here.
It's a terrific date movie.
They are the Wonder Women of 2004.
It's the best of Seinfeld. Sleepover. Rated PG.
They have the voices you know and the faces you don't. And they're among the very few who've made it really big.
At 8:30, 7:30 Central, tonight on Fox.
And the clock is ticking.
Put the voices with the pictures, and you really appreciate what they do.
For Jack Bauer, the question is real.
That's the booming greatness of the godfather of voiceover artist, Don LaFontaine. Just listen.
The game is deadlier. The action is more explosive. But the attitude hasn't changed at all. Die hard with a vengeance.
There's hundreds, maybe thousands of people doing voice work, but only 5 of them are making all the money.
Yeah, that's as it should be. I'm sorry, as long as I'm one of the 5, that's as it should be.
And he's been at it for decades, for the most part enjoying the anonymity, except, of course, where there's a chance to appear on camera as himself, like in this Fox promo for Arrested Development.
The best new comedy of the season, the unanimous favorite. Okay, hold it. How many more of these things are there? I get paid by the word, you know.
30 more, Don.
Okay, let's do this.
He's the curmudgeon of the voice field. He just he doesn't take it too seriously. He still says to me, "They pay me this to do that."
Without being too specific and without prying, how much money is there in successful voice work?
Millions.
Yeah.
For the top guys, yeah, there's.
We watch Don work in a studio, but he and the others with million-dollar voices do most of their work right at home.
Love can seduce you.
Take Ben Patrick Johnson. He's built a studio with a view right at the house. He even has his own engineer.
Ben Patrick Johnson, take one.
On July 9th, the game is on. The friends, the rivals. On this night, anything can happen. Sleepover. FBI agents Marcus and Kevin Copeland have been assigned to protect the heiresses to a multi-billion-dollar fortune. White chicks.
There are, I'd say, 5 or 10 of us that could have the lion's share of the work.
But what?
Notice the hands moving as the big voices work.
Project Twilight.
It's all part of perfecting their inflection.
Find out when your votes are announced live.
And that comes from acting.
I started this clinic. I am this clinic.
From the small screen, George DeLoio brought his big voiceovers to the silver screen.
Thumbs up. See it.
13 going on 30.
What makes George really stand out is equal ease with English and Spanish.
Y Jill está contenta. The thing that sold me to the agency was that they said, well, he speaks Spanish, and that's a growing market. And all right, we'll sign him because he does Spanish.
It is a boys' club.
Cedric Fox is one of the few women to really succeed in voiceovers. She doesn't work out of a home studio with a view, but in a tiny bedroom enclosure,
which houses my very little studio.
Her equipment is connected via broadcast quality lines to networks and local stations.
Women in the City. It's all about the shoes. Tonight at 11. You have to really take it seriously.
So when they say voiceover artist, there really is an art to it.
I believe there's a wonderful art to it.
And Cedric foresees more voiceover work and money for women.
And they're a force to be reckoned with.
They say every job has its ups and downs.
Hope comes alive.
But for the top voices working at home and making millions, it's sure hard to find a downside.
There is no worst part. There's no downside, at least not for me, because I love what I do. I always have. And I consider myself certainly the luckiest person I'd ever met.
So how do you break into voiceover work? You'll need plenty of talent, of course, a strong sample reel, a great agent, and a lot of luck.
Shape of a killer shark.
it somehow touched a nerve that I didn't know that I had touched, of deep fear in people, some sort of atavistic sense of the terror that is inexpressed about being eaten.
It made you think about the possibility of something like that actually happening to you.
And I used to always look at the sea, see the jaws, always expecting a big shark to come.
I go to the beach, but I won't go in the water.
At home, I have a composite of political cartoons from all over the world. Jaws, 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 Jaws. Everything was Jaws. It was like a whirlwind.
Call Chief Brody. Space clear.
Oh no!
Shark! And it's the biggest one I've ever seen! Missed again. Amity 6 of base, somebody tell Chief Brody we're gonna have to wait in the boathouse till it gets here.
Yeah? Great.
Did you see the shark?
Yeah.
Tell us about the shark.
Big. Came right at us.
It's the best thing I've seen yet.
Very beautiful, very nice.
C'est très bon,
très
oui,
bon.
c'est merveilleux.
Très bon, c'est merveilleux. Très, très bien.
This one screamed all the way through. Oh man, it was fabulous.
It was fun.
I cannot live another day without air conditioning.
Says tomorrow's gonna be hotter.
Hotter?
Like yesterday.
Yesterday? Yesterday you said you'd call Sears.
I'll call today.
You call now.
I'll call now.
Now's the time to save on Sears installed central air conditioning. Get 0% finance charge, no billing, and no payments until August with the Sears Charge Home Improvement Plan. Call now for a free in-home estimate on a Kenmore air conditioning system. State-of-the-art engineering means greater energy efficiency. A new Kenmore could save 10 to 44% on your annual cooling costs. In time, even pay for itself. Sears also offers fast emergency installation, a 5-year warranty on parts and labor, plus our satisfaction guarantee. And you know Sears will be there to back it up. Get 0% finance charge, no billing, no payments until August. Offer ends May 31st, so call now and save with Sears.
So what's the paper say about tomorrow?
Another scorcher.
Cool.
Okay, I'm back. Hope you enjoyed that. Trip down there to the Video Street video store. I had to put the dog in the kennel. I always think that she's just going to be so good and just like so quiet in here. I'm fooling myself. I don't know. Had a look just a minute ago outside the Midnight Citizen studio. Yeah, I set up a camera out there. I discovered a webcam at the bottom of a bag of cords this week. And it still works. I'm surprised. It had like a cracked lens and everything. That's why there's a little bit of static on it. But I was like, it'd be kind of cool just to set up a camera outside the Midnight Citizen studio and just capture any craziness that goes on there. It is Saturday night here in Birmingham, and I am up the street from a bunch of bars and restaurants, and prone to getting quite a lot of traffic. A few fights, you know. But yeah, earlier I saw a big a whole posse of people on these like scooters driving by there. And this has become the new thing in Birmingham. There's like these electric scooters that are like parked all over the place, and you have to unlock them with an app. And you can park them anywhere. At least I thought you could park them anywhere. You see them just like thrown all over town. You know, they're just like on the curbs and the sidewalks, sometimes in the middle of the street. And you pick them up and you just unlock them with your phone. And, you know, you pay money to ride on them. And they're kind of fun, but they are a little bit of a nuisance, I have to say. Birmingham, for one, is not much of a bike city. There are not really a whole lot of bike lanes. And so the people who ride bicycles around the city are pretty hip to what the rules are. But now you've got these scooters, and it's like definitely democratized pedestrian travel a lot more. And so now you got these people riding these scooters like in the middle of the street, blocking traffic, riding down the sidewalk and kind of forcing pedestrians who are walking, off to the side. And it'll be interesting to see if this kind of thing lasts, because it's like, to me, in my opinion, maybe I'm just being curmudgeonly, but it is quite annoying. But I'm not ill-informed. I don't wish to be ill-informed. I did try one of these out myself the other day. Yes, I did. Last week I had my car in the shop, and I had to take it down a few blocks to 6th Avenue South into the shop. And I was going to walk back, and it's about a 20-minute walk from the shop back to my apartment. And I was walking down, and I just passed one of these scooters, and it had just been like parked in the middle of the sidewalk. And I walked by it for a second, and I'm like, I'm not going to be one of those guys. And then I was like, no, I'm, part of the idea of being the Midnight Citizen is I'm curious. I have to try new things, right? So I took my phone out and unlocked it, and I'm like, this will probably cost me maybe $2 to ride home, right? To ride, 3 blocks home. About a 5-minute walk or so. Okay. And I open it up with my phone, and I have to put $10 in a deposit. No, I can't put any less. I can definitely put more. I can put as much as like $50 on there. But I have to deposit $10 from my account. And I'm just like, you know what? I hate these things so much, but I don't want to just be like, I don't want to like hate them blindly. Like, if I'm going to hate something, I want to experience it. I want to have an opinion that's informed. So, I was like, whatever. It's a Monday morning. I don't have anything else to do. So I put $10 on this app, and I unlock the thing, and I drive home. And it is, I got to say, it is kind of fun. If not a little dangerous. The roads in Birmingham and the sidewalks are a little bumpy, and they're cracked. And there's evidence of sinkholes everywhere, so you got to be careful. I mean, they advise you to wear a helmet, but I never see anybody wearing a helmet on these things, right? It's not like you just leave your house preparing to walk with a helmet. You have to kind of plan ahead. But I guess, that little thing on the app that says always wear a helmet, it like relieves them of liability. So if somebody like falls and breaks their crown or something like that, they can't sue the scooter company. So I got on this thing, and I came home, and I'm ended up waiting at like 2 red lights on the way home. And I'm like, it's not charging me for this. And then I get home, and I find out, no, it actually charges you per minute that you're riding the thing. And red lights in Birmingham can take a long time to change. So I rode the thing 3 blocks for a total of about 7 minutes. And I used up almost my entire $10 deposit. I just see people riding these things all over town and coming by the Midnight Citizen studio here. Sometimes they're riding them 2 by 2. And I'm just like, those people are spending a lot of money, to ride on this goofball scooter everywhere. I don't know. I shouldn't knock it. Fine. They're electric vehicles. They're saving the environment. That's great. I think there's something a little exploitative about it, You got to pay all this money to save the environment. I don't know. Anyway. Yeah. Welcome back here into the Midnight Citizen studio. Yeah. One more thing to talk about there. So I did just finish reading the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood book, right? This is a book that's based on the movie that came out a couple of years ago called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it takes place in, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. Quentin Tarantino, of course, is I really think that Tarantino may very well be the, kind of the last great American filmmaker working right now. I think his movies are all uniquely original. They're very much informed by, the last 120 years or so of movies. It's like he takes every single movie genre and just throws it into a blender and just sees what comes out. His movies have not always hit with me. I didn't really like Django Unchained. I was kind of lukewarm on his last film, The Hateful Eight. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just hit on all cylinders with me. I don't know what it is about that movie. There's so much. It's such a great film. And if you're not aware, it's a film that takes place on 2 days in 1969, one in February and one in August. And the day in February, which is the first, I would say, 2 acts of the film, you get to know primarily 3 people. Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who is an aging Hollywood actor, kind of from the late 50s, early 60s, who used to be like the star of a hit Western television show. Western television shows were all the rage back then. Shows like Gunsmoke and Bonanza and the Rifleman with Chuck Connors. And then you get to know his stuntman, played by Brad Pitt. Stuntman is named Cliff Booth. And Cliff Booth, of course, because Rick Dalton has fallen on hard times, Cliff has as well. And Cliff, because of a series of run-ins with, actors in Hollywood like Bruce Lee, where Cliff essentially shows them up and, fights them and beats them up, Cliff ends up kind of blackballed from the stunt industry. And basically he's relegated to driving Rick Dalton around town and fixing the antenna on his roof and things like that. And finally, you get to know Sharon Tate, who we all know, of course, was brutally and tragically murdered in her home by members of the Manson family cult in August of 1969. And that's when the second day takes place, right? So the first 2 acts of the film that take place in February of 1969 are relatively chill. You just get to hang out with these characters. You get to see Rick Dalton go to work on a new Western TV show. You get to see Cliff Booth driving around town. It's one of the things I love about the film is that it's a love letter to driving around. And one of my favorite things, and I think a lot of people love this. I mean, that's why, cars are so, expensive. People love to drive around. There's just this undeniable freedom of just rolling the window down, turning the radio up, driving around town, stopping at stoplights, just looking around, just meditating. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is just a love letter to driving around, right? And the film, it won an Academy Award for production design. So as Brad Pitt is driving around town, you're seeing all this amazing, they recreated with no computer generation, I don't think at all, what Hollywood looked like in 1969. Of course, Quentin Tarantino has great memory of what Hollywood looked like in 1969 because he was a young child back then. And there's a lot of great shots that are sort of in the passenger seat looking up, tilted up at Brad Pitt as he's driving around. And Tarantino has said that was my point of view in 1969, driving around with my dad in his convertible around Hollywood, right? So you get to hang out a lot with Cliff Booth as he's driving around town. And then you get to hang out with Sharon Tate, who basically just runs errands throughout most of the entire movie. She goes to see a movie that she starred in. She was an up-and-coming young actress in 1969. She had starred in her husband, Roman Polanski's vampire movie, Pardon Me, But Your Teeth Are in My Neck. And yeah, she had a wonderful career ahead of her. And it was tragically cut short, right? In August of 1969. And that is, of course, the very tense third act of the film when finally you get the feeling that all the fun is over, right? And indeed, it actually starts the third act begins with the Rolling Stones, Baby, You're Out of Time. You just have this feeling that like things are coming to an end in the 1960s. This is the end of it. This is kind of like what I was talking about with Shampoo, where like all these people are so concentrated on their own problems that they really don't see the killers hiding in the shadows, right? So the third act of the film was very tense. Of course, I will not spoil it. This movie did come out 2 years ago. But Quentin Tarantino just made an interesting choice to novelize his own film. Now, all my life, I've kind of had a lukewarm relationship with novelizations of films. Because I grew up being told by English teachers and teachers and my parents that that's not really reading. You know, you're reading the novel of a film that you know very well. So it's not really like you're engaging your imagination. And I always understood what they meant by that. But I think a good novelization can go very, very far to like advancing your understanding of the movie. And a lot of times, you know, novelizations are not based on the movies that you see. They're based on the screenplays that the movies are made from, right? So a lot of times when you read a novelization of a film, you're actually finding out things that were not in the movie that actually lead to your understanding of the movie, okay? So Quentin Tarantino wrote this movie or this book from his own screenplay. So needless to say, there is a ton of stuff in the book that was not in the movie that helps you understand a lot of the stuff that is in the movie that you love so much. But the book itself, I think, stands alone as its own wonderful experience. For instance, it ends completely differently. Like the ending of the film is mentioned in the first 100 pages of the book, and it's never mentioned again. So the book ends where essentially Act 2 in the film ends, you know. Not to spoil it, there's a whole scene at the end of the book that was not in the film. They did shoot for the film, but it's not in the film. And it just contributes. It's. I don't even think that you need to see the movie to really enjoy the book. I think it stands alone by itself, right? So there's something a lot of fun about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I just finished it yesterday. It's a movie where a lot of the scenes are taken directly from the film, but apparently Tarantino wrote it after the film came out. So he's making up a lot of backstory that wasn't even there, you know, when he made the film. For instance, Cliff Booth and his, you know, war record. Like Cliff Booth was a guy who served in the military. And it's interesting because when I was watching the film the first time, there's a whole extended sequence, you know, where Cliff Booth goes out to Spawn Ranch to see members of the Manson family, right? Members of the Manson family were living in Spawn Ranch, which is outside Los Angeles. It's this place where they used to film a ton of, you know, Western television shows. And it was owned by this guy named George Spahn, who by the late 1960s, the time period of the movie, the Manson family had moved to Spawn Ranch, and Charlie Manson had essentially pimped out, you know, one of his girls who used to follow him around, Squeaky, to George Spahn, saying, take care of George, you know, have sex with him, take him on walks, keep him company, watch TV with him, so that he'll let us stay here and he'll be happy, right? So Cliff Booth goes out to Spawn Ranch to essentially see George Spahn to make sure that the hippies aren't taking advantage of him, because Tarantino uses that whole real life history of Spawn Ranch because to tie into the fictional universe, because the idea is that Bounty Law, you know, that show that Rick Dalton used to star in and Cliff Booth used to stunt on, were filmed at Spawn Ranch, right? And so Cliff Booth goes out there to check on George Spahn. And when I was watching the movie for the first time 2 years ago, I was really tensed up that throughout this entire sequence where Brad Pitt's character, Cliff, goes into this dark, you know, rancid house, dilapidated house of George Spahn, with the entire Manson family swarming around him. And you're watching the film knowing that the Manson family are demented, sick psychopaths. They have no feelings at all. And also because you're a student of Tarantino films, you know that anybody can die at any moment. Okay. So you're like, and at that point in time in the movie, you love Brad Pitt. You love his character. You've been driving all over Los Angeles with him. You know, you've sat there in his trailer and watched him feed his dog. You know, you've really bonded with this character. And you're all of a sudden like, wow, 2 hours into the movie, I'm about to watch Brad Pitt get killed by the Manson family, right? Okay. So that's your understanding of what's going to happen in the movie. You're watching knowing that he's going to get killed. Well, when you read the book and you read all about Cliff Booth's history in the military, you know, killing Italians with Filipino freedom fighters, knowing that he murdered many people before and got away with it, you're not worried whatsoever about Brad Pitt in that scene anymore. Like you know that basically anybody who's going to encounter Cliff Booth with murderous intent is not going to make it out of that situation alive, right? It's just not going to happen. So, yeah. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the book is an excellent read, especially for like the hot summer nights like now. You know, I went out every day this week and just put on a movie, like one of those like kind of classic 60s Western type movies. Like I watched The Wild Bunch and had it playing on low volume and just read the book. And I like doing that sometimes, you know, when I'm reading, especially when it's a book that I don't really, you know, like a novelization. I don't really have to pay too much attention to it because I kind of know what's going to happen, but it still surprises me anyway. I can still put on some music in the background, watch a movie, enjoy some whiskey, and it's all good. It's all good, baby. All right, well, that's where I'm going to end it tonight. I think this has been my longest show this summer. This is a plus 2 hour show. Anyway, if you're still with me live, thank you so much for joining me. I had a great time. PQ and Adam and all the gang over at Paul's house on the back deck. Moody and Jody, happy birthday once again. Once again, you can catch this episode and all other shows of The Midnight Citizen over at mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. You can listen to me and a bunch of other wonderful other night radio hosts over at onsug.com, ONSUG.com. That's the Overnightscape Underground. And check out this live stream as well as a bunch of other live streams just like it over at youtube.com/MikeBooty. Yeah, that's right. That's where you can find me. And yeah, until next time, keep your eyes open.